Hi and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to do a video related to my LEGO UCS Millennium Falcon, set number 75192. Now I'm not actually going to review the set itself. I've had this set for about 3 or 4 years now. I'm actually looking at getting a display stand for it. So not a case, but an actual stand. Now the reason I want to do this is because this is a big chunky LEGO set. It's about 83 centimeters long, about 60 wide, and it takes up quite a bit of space on any display area, sort of sideboard or bookcase or anything like that, because it is a big chunky set. So I was quite taken with some of the display stands that put the Falcon at about 70 degrees. There's quite a bit of choice out there. There's ones from Wicked Brick, there's one from iDisplay that get quite well reviewed, and there's a few others. There's sort of some sort of homemade type ones that you can buy online, which are made from LEGO bricks themselves. So I think when this first came out, someone designed a stand using Technic bricks, which you can get. It's quite expensive. You can buy the design. I think then you can go and source the bricks, but that actually can be quite expensive, being Technic bricks. You can get ones from sort of Chinese websites, but the quality of the bricks is unlikely to be the quality that you'd hope for or get from LEGO. So whether they'd be stable enough or strong enough is debatable. So I was looking around and I came across a company called Unique Displays. Now, I'd like to say now this video is not sponsored by them. I am just bought this about my own money to see what it was like. So their stand is made of perspex, a little bit like the Wicked Brick and the iDisplay stands and some others out there. So I just want to see what it's like, see if it's stable, see if it puts it at a nice angle, see how much space it actually saves for actually doing this, and see if it's actually worth the cost it is, because it's actually quite a bit cheaper than some of the others out there. Now, I won't be doing this comparison as a side-by-side with other stands. I've only bought the one from Unique Display, so I'll be reviewing it basically based on whether I feel it is good design and whether it is stable to actually hold my Falcon or not. And then, you can make your decision as to whether you think it's worth going for. So I'll pause a moment, I'll move the Falcon off the table here so I can actually get the stand open and unboxed, and we'll see what it's like to build. Back in a moment. Okay, and I'm back. Here's the package that arrived a couple of days ago. It only took a few days to actually arrive from ordering, which I was really impressed with. Some other stands I've seen online have, delivery times of, into the 2-3 weeks, whereas this was literally maybe 3 days, I think it was. So we'll start by opening this up and actually getting into it and see how well it's been packaged and everything. Okay, so there's no additional packing in the box, which is maybe a little bit disappointing. I thought there might be, just to protect the pieces. I mean, all the pieces do have, as you can see here, a clear or a sort of opaque film on them. But I hoped that they might have had something between the sheets just to stop it rattling around the box and scratching itself. Here's a few of their things online. I will put a link up in the description. So I'll take this out, get into the packaging. So I went with the stand that had the base to put the actual figures on, which I think this piece is. Those will be the side pieces. There'll be one base, there'll be a brace at the back, and here will be the base plate. Another brace. Okay, that's quite good. Now, I don't think there's any... Oh, there's a small bag here that comes as well. This just seems to have little 1x1 pips, which I think go in here, that then you can sit your actual LEGO figure on. I don't think these are genuine LEGO ones, but that doesn't really matter, as long as they fit. Now I don't think there's actually any instructions that go with this, other than remove the protective film before you actually put it together. I mean, there is a QR code there you can possibly look at online to see some instructions, but I think it should be fairly obvious. So I'm going to go for it as it is. So we'll put these bits to one side. So it's interesting what looks like a cut little minifigure head there. So I shall remove the protective film off this. In terms of actual perspex here, it's I believe it's 5mm perspex, which seems to be pretty much standard for these sort of stands. The edge is quite nicely polished, so it's obviously been finished off like that. Oh, very staticky. So it's a nice. So I'm assuming this is the right way up because, like I say, it's got a little minifigure head engraved into it there. So I assume this is the right way up for this one. Oh, this interestingly is actually labelled spare. Now I don't know why I should be concerned about that or reassured that they give you a spare. You do wonder why you're actually giving someone a spare for one of the bracing pieces. I mean, it feels sturdy enough. I have seen reports of other stands where these pieces I think must break off because they've obviously been cut quite deep here, but that seems okay, so we'll put that to one side. But that's quite good. They do give you a spare. Right, let's take one of the side pieces off. It's quite a plasticky smell, this. I do fear that this is going to ending up with lots of dirty fingerprints on it just by taking it apart, put it together. So it might have to have a polish before it actually goes up with the Falcon on it. Again, that looks really nice, actually, nice crystal clear. So that'll slot in here. Just going to check. Should move this forward a bit so it's a bit more in shot. There we go. So there's no sort of screwing into the base, it is just a friction fit. Which I think is the case for pretty much all of these sort of stands, the perspex ones. They don't actually screw in the base at all. It is literally just held together by friction into slots in the base. Now, Unique Display do a whole bunch of other displays, not just for LEGO. I think if you go to the Unique Display website, that is primarily aimed at LEGO. But if I remember, the company is actually Plexico, and they do display stands for a whole bunch of other things, not just LEGO, for sort of swords, other memorabilia, things like that. So they've obviously been in the business of doing display stands for things for quite a while. So this, I'm assuming, is the back piece that goes on these brace points here. So yeah, some of their other display stands, which actually look quite nice if you're into these sort of things, are for the LEGO Technic cars, like the Ferrari and the Bugatti. They have some quite nice display stands that put those effectively vertical on the wall, so they sort of clip in and then hang vertically. And they're obviously colour coordinated. Those look actually really nice if you're into those sort of types of LEGO sets. Star Wars, if you've probably seen from other things on my channel, is primarily what I'm into in LEGO. So this will slot in here. Very squeaky. The whole stand itself seems to have a slight cant to one side, but that'll now fix that. I don't know, that's just the way they're put into the holes. Just make sure this is firm in the base. Then we'll get the brace that goes up the back here. So this is actually quite fiddly. Hopefully it won't take me too long to pick this off. It's just getting a fingernail under a point to start it. Let's try this end instead. But it does seem to have nicely protected the actual gloss of the Perspex, so there's no, even though I was a bit concerned of it being sat in the thing with no packing between the pieces, this seems to have protected it perfectly well. So again, we just need to line it up. Now, at first sights, this is, I think, pretty stable. Let's just check that's in shot. Forward a bit. In fact, we'll just so at first glance, this seems to be pretty stable. It all seems to be holding together pretty well. The Falcon's going to rest on these pieces here. So the other thing I bought was for displaying the minifigures. So again, I'm going to take the film off this. This again has a little minifigure engraved in it. Where this sits is this actually sits in front of the stand, so you can sort of detach it. Like I say, it's got little holes to put your minifigures, little pegs, 1x1s. So just put these in. I think it also takes the display, the name piece. Yeah, these are Lego-like pips, but as long as they actually sit the appropriate distance apart, the Lego figures can sit on these. It doesn't really matter whether it's a Lego one or a clone one or one they've done themselves that is basically the same dimensions as this. There we go. I quite like the idea of having the figures displayed in front. I also quite like having the figures actually in things like the cockpit. But the cockpit really is the only place that you can sort of see the figures easily without taking the lid off, things like that. What I quite liked about having one of these display stands, although I am still nervous about putting my Falcon at about 70 degrees, which I think is what this one is that you can see some of it a bit more easily than you can when it is, say, sat, basically flat on a desk or something like that. It just gives it that different perspective. I was tempted by some of Unit Display also do cases as well, so there's a case for the Falcon, and a little bit like Wicked Brick and some of the other ones, they have display cases that have backgrounds that have star fields or things like that, which I think look really nice. But the only thing about those is that the cost is really quite a lot. I mean, you're paying, okay, the Falcon in the UK now is about £750 retail. Obviously you're unlikely to pay that if you can get it a good deal, but that is the cost of some of the display cases is ending up to about £250 with a background, which it's not an insignificant proportion of the actual cost of the thing itself. So there's a couple of spare pips in there. Right, so what I'll do is I will get my Falcon and I will put it on the stand and we can see how stable this thing feels. I'll be back in a moment. Okay, so that's the stand built and the Falcon mounted on it, and I'd have to say it does look very impressive. It puts the Falcon at about 70 degrees, and obviously it takes up a lot less space as a result. I like the plate at the front with the characters. So yeah, it looks really, really good. However, there are a few buts with this stand, and I'll turn it around and I'll show you if you hold a moment. So here's around the back, and again it does look really good. I do like the way it allows you to get access to things like the gun turret. There's also the gun in this bit that drops down. So that's really nice. However, I have a few concerns of the actual build of this particular stand and the quality of that build. So if we look down here, there is quite a gap from the back piece, this piece here, against the base. But if you look at this side, there's no gap. It's a little bit more evident here where it actually slots in. As you can see here, this is actually raised up. If I press it down, it goes down, but then it gradually raises up again. So obviously there's some manufacturing tolerances that aren't quite perfect here. I mean, if you do that and you give it a bit of a wobble, it just comes back up again, whereas this side stays perfectly flush. Now that in itself is not terrible. I mean, like I say, the stand, if you wobble it, seems pretty stable, but that does, that's up by about 2 or 3 millimeters, which is not great really. However, that's not my major problem I have with this stand. The major concern I have is the amount of support that the stand is actually giving the Falcon here. So if you see here, this is the vertical piece that comes down, or the slope bit that comes down, and there is quite a significant gap here at the bottom which I can put my finger through. That means it's actually got a much more reduced actual amount of arm that the Falcon is resting on, given we've got this big gap here. Now that's about 1 centimetre, I would reckon. I can give it a measure and I'll put it on the actual thing. But that is quite substantial. Now you can sort of see in here the vertical line at the back is actually where it goes to, and if I actually remove this foot, it might become a bit more obvious. There you go, I've removed the foot. If we look up a bit, it goes in a fair way, but there's still quite a bit of distance it could have gone in to give a bit better support to the Falcon. Now, it's odd this, because on other models I've seen, other stands I've seen, this doesn't appear in the pictures on the various companies' websites to actually be such a large gap here. On this stand, I think the problem is that this slope piece here is actually fouling on this sort of skirt bit of the Falcon. Now certainly from the pictures of the Wicked Brick one, this below the arm it supports it on, this is cut much more vertical rather than it being sloped further down, and so I don't think it would actually foul on this bit. So I don't really like that. I don't think it has as much support as it could actually have. And again, there's a similar amount of sort of support gap at this side as well. If you go up, the gap disappears to nothing where it rests at the top here. But again, at the bottom here, there is quite a significant gap there. The other problem I have with this is, well, not a major problem, but in the photographs on the website, they do show the removal or the removal of at least one of these feet. It looks as if they've actually got it mounted with these 2 feet in place, but they do show one of the feet being removed. And actually on the website, it shows it sort of being supported here with a cross cutout, effectively a Lego piece cross cutout in the actual perspex here, which it slots into to keep it sort of tidy, rather than just having to, I guess, dump it in the side of the back there. Now on this one, I don't have that, and it's not on the other side either. So that's a little bit disappointing that they haven't actually done that. Now, like I say, you do have to take some feet out. You can actually, with a bit of rework, put the feet back in again. So what I've done with this one is it sort of fouls this piece, which normally would be sloped at an angle, actually fouls against the side here. But with a bit of adjustment of that foot, you can make it a bit more vertical, and you can slot the foot back in. Now the foot that goes at the front here, you can't so easily do that, and it actually fouls against the vertical piece on this side. So you actually have to take off the front bit here, effectively this piece, and then you can actually make it fit if you wanted to. So if you ever did need to take it off the stand, you would actually be able to put it on a desk or something, because you'd have both or all the feet there. Whereas some stands you seem to have to take all the feet off and then leave them off. But I have one other criticism about this as well, and I'll show you that if I turn it back around again. So back around the front, and I'll show the other issue I have with this stand. Now obviously I bought it with the minifigure display plate, which I think looks really, really good. I mean, it shows off all the figures really nicely. They all are shown here. And we even have room for the Minoc and the alternative communications dish, which I think is really good. I mean, some of the actual other stands I've seen, or which have sort of minifigure displays, they don't have space, for example, for this. And I'm not sure they actually have space for the Minoc on some of them. And some don't even have one at all, so I think this is a real positive. But my main criticism here is that in the marketing pictures, this stand fits flush against the base. But as you can see there's a gap between the two shaped pieces here of about 30 or 40 millimeters. And it is on this side as well. Now, that seems to be because the plaque is basically fouling against the pod on the side of the ship. Now you could, if you wanted to, take the plaque off and mount it a bit further forward, but then you'd have to end up mounting it in front of the 2 little characters here, and you'd obscure them. Now that I think is really disappointing, because it for the black stand, it completely ruins the look of the actual thing. If it was the clear stand, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Perhaps you wouldn't see the fact that, you know, it's clear, then a gap, and then clear for the other stand. But if you've got the black stand, the black base, it really does just glare at you if you've got it on anything other than a black worktop or something. So that, to me, is another real disappointment in this actual stand. There's something odd about this in the fact that it doesn't seem to fit. And the only I can think is on the pictures on the website, this seems to be lower down, or maybe the whole Falcon is higher up. Now, possibly this is due to the fact that at the back, where it's sat on the support arms, it's because there's the gap, the whole base is pushed forward further. And maybe if this was more vertical at the bottom and pushed in more, then this would go back and the gap wouldn't be present. But it is. So that is a bit of a disappointment, I think. I mean, overall, it does put the Falcon at a really nice angle. Like I say, it puts it about 70 degrees. which does look extremely impressive. And this stand was quite a bit cheaper than other ones. So I think this was about £35 in the UK, compared to, for example, the Wicked Brick, which is 59, I think. But maybe the cheaper price is actually showing in, certainly around the back, the quality and accuracy of the construction and the lack of support, and maybe this problem we have here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to give Unique Displays a contact. I'll drop them an email and see if I can find out from them what's going on here, because there's obviously something wrong either with this stand or with their design in general. Hopefully I'll do an update to the end of this video before I publish it, which will have their responses in it. But until then, thank you for watching, and I hope you found this interesting. Okay, everybody, I've got an update from Unique Displays. I emailed them with a variety of pictures to show them the various issues that I thought I had with this stand, like the massive gap we've got here, and the fact that it is not sort of fitting properly. It took me a few days to get back to me, and initially they sort of said that, well, they sold quite a few of them in that preceding week, and nobody else had come back with any complaints about them. So in the end, they actually gave me a refund. But I have to say I wasn't entirely happy with that. I mean, I actually wanted to find out why this doesn't fit properly. Because obviously on their website it shows it's fitting. If other people had actually got this and it was fitting as badly as this, I would have thought they would have complained to them, as I did. So again, I sent a few more queries back to them, and eventually I got another email and a few pictures of actually where this thing should seat. And it turns out that this is actually the wrong place to mount this, mount the Falcon on. You actually need to mount it underneath this piece here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause a moment and I'm going to remount this, and I will show you what it looks like when it's actually mounted in the place that they intend it to be mounted. Now, in my defense, there was nothing on their website other than some pictures that, to be honest, looked as if this side was mounted basically between these two pieces here. Now, Wicked Brick actually have a video of how to mount it, and they do actually have some a still image which actually shows you where to put the stand, but Unique Displays don't. So if nothing else, I should be suggesting to Unique Displays that they actually have a picture of the back of the Falcon and actually show properly where this thing should be mounted. So I'll pause mount and I'll just remount this, and we'll have another look to see if it actually improves the situation. Okay, so that's the stand remounted, and now it's actually underneath this sort of skirt area rather than sitting in here. So that actually has now raised the whole thing up by, possibly 30mm. So that hopefully will fix the problem around the front, and I'll show you that in just a moment. But there is still a gap here. Now, it's nothing like as big a gap as there was. I can't actually get my finger through this, but that must be a good 8mm, maybe 7-8mm. So there's still quite a gap behind this slope piece and the actual back of the Falcon itself, which I would prefer it actually to be resting on it, just to give it a bit better support. Now, the reason I think it would be better for that was that if you look underneath here, this protruding arm is now resting on this panel. Now, that panel itself is it's not a fixed panel. It's sort of it's got one or two Technic piece beams that go through, and then there's a couple of sort of holding plates on there. So it sort of sits there, and there's I think there's a couple of sloped bricks that just basically stop it from going any further. But what we've got now, if I can sort of demonstrate this, is basically the weight of the whole Falcon pushing back on this, sliding back on this, is now pressing on this panel. Now for this front panel it's not too bad, but if you go around the back of the Falcon and look at this panel is nothing like as well fixed in the Falcon. And if I actually just, let me zoom out a bit, and I actually push the panel back to where it should be, you can see here it should be about there, and because the weight of the Falcon on the arms, it's basically dropping it back to about there. So it is actually flexing this panel quite considerably. And you'll also see that this sort of skirt piece is also flexing quite a bit. So if you move the Falcon backwards and forwards on this, because it's pressing on this and it's putting a lot of weight on this whole panel here, it's actually bowing the whole that backwards and forwards. So yes, it's got better. Yes, the amount it's supported is a lot better, but I'm not happy with the fact it's now resting all its weight on here. If this arm actually with this now is a little bit shorter, this would be resting on the slope piece here, and it wouldn't be resting on this panel and actually bending this panel out of shape. Like I say, that panel shouldn't be being bent forward like that. And it is actually opening up the gap there on this side quite a bit. The other problem I have is that, so now it's resting on effectively these bricks. Now these are just, they're plates. So the plate is, see where the studs are? The plate is fixed back there on the studs. They are 4x6, I think, plates, something like that. And again, they're resting or attached to this plate, which is then attached to the Technic beam or the Technic rod beam here. Now, really, for having any sort of support, you want this to be actually resting on these blocks here. I really wouldn't want to have this resting, for example, on just the edge of this piece here, because it'd be putting a lot of upward force on that piece there, which could quite easily basically rotate it and ping it off its actual holding on this piece. So you do have to be very, very careful to line this up. So on both arms, you're actually resting on these plates, but the plates with, sorry for the focus there, the plates with these 2x2 by 1 blocks actually behind it. Now again, that is not clear from their website that this is quite important, but to be honest, if I think you put it on this piece, I think there's a very good chance that, like I say, this would come off and your Falcon would end up on the floor. So again, I'm still not entirely happy with the way they've actually got this mounted. There is still a massive gap here. I mean, why make the arms so long if you've got a massive gap here? It still also doesn't solve the problem that this is now, it's still not resting on the back. The Falcon's back is not resting on the back of this piece. It's resting on this plate or these panels here and the panel at the back on the actual support arm. If you want to make the support arm stronger, rather than making it deeper in that way, if you've achieved the support depth you can achieve, make it deeper that way. So make it deeper vertically, but not as deep horizontally, and then you can actually have the back of the Falcon resting against the back of the stand, rather than having this gap. Now, like I say, the gap is not as bad as it was, but it is still, you know, probably a good 6 to 8 millimeters. So I'm still not convinced with how they've mounted at the back, but like I say, it has solved the problem at the front. So I'll just turn the model around and we'll see what it looks like from the front now. So back around the front of the model, if we now look at the display stand with the minifigures, this now fits perfectly against the base. If I pull it forward, you can see the gap, and now it slots neatly back, because now this is actually fitting just underneath the side pod there, which is where it's supposed to fit. So having it raised up just a little bit by mounting it on a slightly different place has actually fixed that problem. My only slight criticism, and this is real pickiness, is that I really wish this was actually central to the pod. I think aesthetically it would look much nicer if the centre of the pod was in the centre of the display thing here. But it isn't, so it's not a major issue, but it just slightly detracts from it. So overall, what do I think of the actual stand? Well, the stand is nice. It puts the Falcon at a very good angle. I do really like the minifigure plate. It contains more spaces for more minifigures and the extra dish than any of the other ones I've seen, like the Wicked Brick one. But I still think they have a bit of an issue as to how they actually mount this on the stand with the actual support arms. Is it worth £35? Yes, it probably is. Even with the faults, you would have to be really careful how you mount this to make sure that actually mount it is correctly so it doesn't break a brick off or anything like that, or your Falcon falls. Would I trust it to hold my Falcon? I'm not sure. I might still put something just to make sure it didn't fall off. But overall, it's good stand, but it has some disappointments. So as such, I could probably recommend it, but I think there might be other ones out there you might prefer to actually have a look at first. Thank you for watching. I hope you found that useful and interesting. I certainly found it interesting to actually try this. Now I have actually ordered a Wicked Brick stand, and when I get that I will make a video of that one, and hopefully we can do a comparison. So thank you for watching.